This is the Forbes Books Podcast, conversations with amazing humans who are impacting the world of business and beyond. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and as you know by now, I'm a sucker for a good rags to riches story, and my guest this week is living it out in real time. April Budney is the founder and president of Old Whaling Company, a bath and body products company she built from the ground up a little over 10 years ago. We're going to get into how her creativity, grit, and passion for crafting exceptional personal care products have paved the way for the extraordinary growth that has led Old Whaling Company to blossom into a multi-million-dollar business. Plus, we're going to find out what a shower steamer is. April, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So, April, I have this theory. You know how dogs like costumes and the other half don't like it? Like my dog, Nathan, I cannot put a costume on it to save his life, even though I always want to make him Instagram famous. It's never going to happen. I feel the same way about entrepreneurs. People are either born entrepreneurs or they're not. And I feel like you're one of those that was born an entrepreneur. It sounds like from your backstory that you've had this entrepreneurial spirit pretty much your entire life.
I think that was probably true for me. I don't know if it's true for everyone, but I definitely, from a very, very young age, I was, inspired by, very close family friends who were successful business owners. I don't think I ever really wanted to own a business so much as just be self-employed, because entrepreneur wasn't really like a thing in the 80s. I mean, it was, but that's really not what you called it, I don't think. But I don't know. I was like 5 or 8. So
well, thank you for showing your age. I'm obviously older than you, but in the 80s, April, and I have this running joke on the podcast. If someone said they were an entrepreneur, you'd be like, "Oh, you're unemployed." So obviously, the word entrepreneur has evolved over the years. So you're inspired by all these family and friends you're seeing. And you're like, did you not have the DNA of like, I can't take orders, like I got to be the boss? Was that part of it?
I do think that was probably a lot of it. My parents are probably better equipped to answer this question than me, but they always said like I didn't listen, I didn't like to take direction. So probably.
All right. So then, what was the thing you decided upon? Was Old Whaling your first venture, or were it was one of those things where it was like, trial and error? I'm going to try this thing and that thing. What was kind of your first? I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to be my own boss.
The first thing was real estate. That was the very first thing. And that my friends' parents, who I really found very inspirational, they also did real estate. And boy, did they make it look easy. So it was difficult. I mean, I did okay. I think probably better than a lot of folks starting out. But that was my first. And I love it. I love old homes, but I didn't like the buying and selling process. That was very boring to me.
And it's funny you say the buying and selling process, because I always tell folks who are entrepreneurs, and I say it a lot on this podcast, people are tired of it. Like the money transaction part of it always gave me heebie-jeebies. That's why I can never be an entrepreneur. It's probably just my working class family background of like, you work all week and then the man gives you a check on Friday. So like extracting money from people for a service is always weird. Like the podcast I do at Forbes Books, I have no idea how much we charge folks to do it. I don't care. I don't want to know. But you say the buying and selling thing, but you still want to be an entrepreneur. So how do you reconcile the buying, selling part of it, but then also trying to be a successful entrepreneur? Because that's the one thing I could do. Obviously, doing like spreadsheets and all that stuff, I can't do either. But like the selling part of it, was that something you were able to grasp onto or evolve to accept?
Well, I think once I found what I really wanted to do, I didn't even think about it. It wasn't an issue because I was really excited. I was really passionate about it. So you don't really have to sell when it comes more natural. And that's what happened with Old Whaling Company. With our products, it's not like we're like hard selling. So we just really love what we do and we want to share it with people. We think that they will really love it. And I think that comes across in our brand and our retail stores. And so like we're excited, so other people are excited, and it really doesn't feel like selling. We kind of look at more as serving rather than selling.
I love that. So let's get into the origins of the Old Whaling Company, because it is what people might say like the American dream. Like you literally started from the bottom and now you're the living embodiment of a Drake song. So tell me about when you came upon the idea of what Old Whaling was going to be and how you started it. What were those first steps?
The origins were way back when my son, Jack, was a baby. He had super sensitive skin, and it kind of, set me down this journey of like just kind of paying attention to what was in products. And that was the early 2000s. So it was about the time when, you could walk into the bookstore and find all those little books on like how to make your own house cleaner and how to just do like more natural things. I started to pay attention more to what was in the things I was using every day. But then particularly there was a pharmacy in Bath, Ohio, and I was in there all the time. Finally, I just struck up a conversation with a pharmacist, and he was sharing with me how his grandmother made goat milk soap. I really had no idea you could make soap. I just know that my son had this terrible diaper rash kind of situation that was never going to go away unless I did something. And I didn't really want to put him on steroids, which is what the doctors want to do. They just want to, our doctor anyway, just wanted to be like, here you go. And I was like, no, I'm not really into that.
So I got to stop you there. So the Old Whaling Company wouldn't begin if Jack didn't have diaper rash. That's what it almost sounds like. Do you think you would have ever discovered soap or make your own soap because of that?
I really don't think so. He reminds me of that every day.
He's like, that inheritance, I should get more than my other siblings because it's my responsibility. All right, so you have this idea to make soaps, and then how do you then make the connection of making soaps for Jack to then making soaps for the masses?
So once I played around with it, and the connection to me was like, in my brain was so easy. I just was like, I really think I could figure this out much better and make something out of this. And it was a very slow, like long process, but there was really no process to it. It was just like, I couldn't stop the ideas from coming. Once I get an idea, it just becomes a rabbit hole. And so Old Whaling Company was basically just one big rabbit hole.
All right. So you go down the rabbit hole, you start creating soaps. Then what's the next thing? Because, if you start a company in 2023, it's like direct to consumer. I'm going to build a website. I'm going to go on social media, buy Instagram ads. I don't think that's the tack you took, right?
No, definitely not. So I moved to South Carolina about 12 years ago. I didn't know anyone. I was just kind of starting over. There was just really like a need to survive. I mean, really, that's what it boiled down to. And so when I met my husband, Mike, which was about the time I moved to South Carolina, he was super supportive, and he was really fascinated by the idea, and he was just so eager to help. So really almost from the get-go, like together, we came up with recipes, and he helped make molds. And so, but going back to the selling, I knew that I couldn't just make a website and sell soap. I mean, first, there was no money for that. And second, I had no idea how to do that. So we just did, there's a lot of like artisan fairs in Charleston. That's where we started. I mean, it was, nothing fancy. I mean, anywhere that would let us set a tent up and sell, that's how we started.
And from what I understand, your big break, so to speak, was when you started selling at the market, which for folks who have visited Charleston, it's one of the top tourist traps. It's this giant indoor/outdoor market where artisans sell their fairs. And that's sort of like where Old Whaling Company kind of took off, correct?
Definitely. I knew about the market, but I knew also that it was really difficult to get into the market. So I didn't necessarily think that it was going to be an avenue for us. So I really didn't look into it until a conversation with Julian Smith, who was the founder of the Cooper River Bridge Run. He oddly took an interest. I guess he had an interest in soap. He used to grow eucalyptus, and that's a whole nother podcast probably. So he strongly suggested, checking out the city market, and he told me that they had a night market. So once I looked into it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know why we wouldn't do this. We applied to the night market. That was back in 2013. Yeah, 2013. And we went every single weekend. And then in January, all of the night market vendors had an opportunity to jury for the daytime market, to be a what's called a temporary vendor. we were able to jury for the daytime market. Once the results of the jury came out in March of 2014, we did really well, and essentially we were able to start going almost every single day. And from that point on, I remember it was St. Patrick's Day. I was about 7 months pregnant with Charlotte, and we woke up and the jury list came out, and I remember like looking at it and was just like, it was really like winning the lottery, because it was like, oh my gosh, like I know we can support our family doing this now. It wasn't even like I get to make this amazing business. It was like, we can pay the light bill and the rent in the month it's due.
Wow. Well, without getting too much into the rabbit hole of the market, because it almost sounds like the Illuminati, some secret society. So when you say jury, you have to be voted in to have one of those booths, for lack of a better word?
That was the process for us. So
Wow.
we all of those spaces are leased to vendors who've been there for, 20, 30 years, some of them. And when
Wow.
those vendors don't come for whatever reason, like on that particular day, then they're filled by what's called a temporary vendor. The market manager will count the open spaces, do essentially a roll call of the temporary vendors that have showed up. And once all the spaces are filled, then all of the remaining temporary vendors pack up and go home, and everyone else gets to work.
Wow. That is crazy. So talk me through the jump from we're able to pay our electric bill to, hey, we've got like a brand. When did you realize like this is a thing that goes beyond selling it in this secret society of vendors?
I think I always knew that. I had so many ideas, and I don't know how I knew this, but I understood from the beginning that it was a brand, no matter like how, little money I had. I don't know exactly at what point. I think it was we were just working all the time. We would make products all evening, and then we would go the next day. I mean, it was awesome because we were making money and we could pay the bills and everything. But we also knew that like if we were the ones doing this 24 hours a day, that it was just always going to be like that. So we hired our very first employee, Celia, Memorial Day of that year that we got into the market. So we got in March, and then we hired her a couple months later because I was going to have a baby. So I needed a couple days off.
Yeah, a couple at least. Yeah. And so you
I think I
hired
actually did take maybe 4 days off.
Oh, of course. That sounds about right for an entrepreneur. So you hire an employee, but then how does it become what it's become today? Because now if anyone travels anywhere, in many vacation spots, you're going to see old whaling company stuff. I've seen it in major grocery stores. If you come to Charleston, there's a couple of brick and mortar locations outside of the Charleston market. That doesn't happen overnight. That all of a sudden you have this thing that's a market, and then you have one employee, and then you become this global brand.
Well, it's funny. Like I look back and think sometimes I don't even know how it happened, but but really it was just, I always knew, or I always felt like in my heart that this was something really special, and that if we just took what we needed to survive and put everything else back into the business, that we could really build it into what we knew it could be. When we hired people, like Celia was our first employee, and now she's our VP of production. So she is still with us. She's been with me from the beginning. And then her sister is our VP of operations. So those two women have been so instrumental in building this business. And right from the very beginning, it sounds cheesy, but I was just like, I don't just need employees. I need people who like believe in this and who believe that it can become bigger than it is right now standing in our kitchen. And they always believed in it, and they believed in me. And once you hire people, it's not just about you anymore. It's about them too. So I owed it not just to myself and my family, but you owe it to your team to follow through.
It's funny because when I talk to entrepreneurs about this, that no one is going to love or care about your company more than you. They may say they do, or, obviously actions speak louder than words, but you felt that you needed that buy-in. Now, when you get bigger, it's harder to have that immediate or sort of like that immediate like feel that you're like, oh, this person's in on it, because those folks you were working the ground, you're on the ground floor working with them. So how do you get to building the team with folks that have that buy-in that those first two employees had? Because I feel like that's the toughest part of scaling. It's easy to just start hiring people. It's just writing a check. But then how do you know that they have the passion that's not maybe equal to you, but close to equal to what you feel about Old Whaling Company?
Yeah, that it definitely does become more difficult over time, but those folks are out there. Sometimes it is like a needle in a haystack, but we always manage to find really great folks who care about the brand. Like, for instance, our retail team and our production team, it's shockingly little turnover because people they really enjoy working for the company. But I think that back to your question about how do you get those folks to care? It's really about, I think, having great management in place. And our retail manager, Katie, and our wholesale manager, Noelle, I mean, they're really passionate about the company, like truly, and they're really good leaders and they're good managers. Everyone cares about their team. So I think that people just really enjoy working for them.
So a decade ago, you had no money to build a website, and now you've got a pretty substantial one and a big direct-to-consumer market. How has that shaped the scaling of the company to take it from, brick and mortar, in-person sales to then being able to deliver direct to the consumer? Was that one of the bigger jumps the company took?
So it wasn't necessarily a jump, because how that kind of happened was we had so many customers come through at the city market that we knew we had to make sure that they knew that they could go home and still order from us. And that time we were on Etsy. Okay. And Etsy doesn't really cost any money until you make a transaction. It was probably 4 years ago, that we were in the top like 1% of all Etsy stores. Wow. And we were just like, okay, we're scared to make the leap to our own website, but at the same time, we really need to. Because I mean, Etsy is great. It's great, but once you get to a certain point, like everybody's Etsy page looks the same. You can only brand it so much before you should probably just take the leap and build a website. So our online sales supported us building a website.
Wow. And what's the reaction been like since the 5 years of launching? Have you seen? It's safe to assume sales have grown since leaving Etsy. I'm sure, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. They've grown probably tenfold.
Wow.
Over the years, of course, and I will credit that to we have a massive email list that we began collecting. We had this little diary at the city market, and people would write in their email addresses, and we would put those in once a week. And that's still today how we get a large part of our e-commerce sales is through just email contact.
And so you read a lot of business books about that say, find that one thing you do well and just do that. It's like, Five Guys burgers. They're just going to make burgers. They're not going to start making chicken sandwiches. Old Whaling Company started as a soap company and then has branched out to other things like candles and such. So at what point during the evolution of the company you were like, okay, our soaps are doing well, but what else can we add to the menu without it affecting the sort of overall message of Old Whaling Company? When did you realize that I guess maybe candles were the next thing? You tell me, like, when did you decide to add different items to the menu?
Well, we actually had different things pretty much from the beginning. We also sold scrubs, and those were popular, but the issue is that they were very messy. And the beautiful thing about the city market is that they just tell you, "Whew, that scent's terrible," or "Wow, you should do this," or "Oh, you should do that." And so the one thing that we heard a lot was, "Oh, it'd be great if you guys, had a lotion." So the thing that we did after the soap and the scrubs was a body butter. At first we had 2 scents, and we sold so much. And then we were like, well, if we sell this much in 2 cents, maybe we should sell all of our fragrances. So we did, 5 more, and then we did all of them. And it was like all of a sudden body butter was 50% of our business.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's not quite 50%, but it is our number one selling product today.
Wow. Why do you think the body butter stuck? Because, when you and Mike are making soap molds and everything like that, I'm sure you're probably thinking, hey, maybe one day we're going to make the same scent into like a lotion. Is that one of those things where where entrepreneurship surprises you, where you're like, it's not that linear path. It kind of goes off into different tangents?
It didn't surprise me because as a woman, like it always just seemed like a natural thing to do. Like I knew that we would do more. We just needed the time and the money. If a customer likes a scent in a certain soap, then they're probably really going to enjoy it, outside of the shower too. For me, that was just it was a very natural addition to, to what we were already selling. And it's a great product and people really, really do love it.
All right. So now candles, and I want to ask you, I want to start by telling you, when I was a kid, candles were the thing you kept in your house if the power went out, or candles were like something you would light up for a fancy dinner or Halloween or Christmas. When did candles become a thing that like every mall in America has to have at least a minimum of 3 candle stores? Everyone has dozens of candles in their house. Have you ever thought about like this fascination of people and candles?
I actually have. I was just thinking about this last week, how when I was a kid, like we never had candles. Can't remember any of my friends ever having candles. Maybe it was a thing for certain people, but it definitely wasn't for us.
Same.
I feel like I remember it becoming a thing maybe in the late 90s, like early 2000s, where you could buy a candle at the holidays. And then I don't know when they became everywhere, but it's definitely within the past 20 years.
And so why did you want to get involved in the candle space? Because it was one of those things like, man, everyone's making candles. Why not us?
Well, it just seemed like a natural addition. I think, when you have a business that involves scents and fragrance, people really fall in love with those and they want just more than one product quite often. So if they love the soap and the body butter, then, maybe they want to enjoy it on their desk while they're working. And so it was just a natural transition.
And was that one of those things that kind of took off as soon as people saw it? They're like, oh yeah, I need them candles from Old Whaling Company.
They did very well. The thing that really catapulted our candles was introducing Coastal Christmas. That really increased our sales quite a bit.
That's so cool. We started the conversation talking about that you're not selling to your community, you're serving your community. And I feel like a big part of what you do is this community that you've built in person to now online and on social media. What is it like to have this impact on people where you become part of their everyday grocery list? It's like, I got to go pick up milk, I got to pick up butter, I got to go pick up another candle from Old Whaling Company. Well, tell me about that connection to the folks that have supported your brand for decades now. But what does that feel like?
It's honestly surreal when I really stop and think about it. I mean, we have built a great brand where our products are staples in people's lives. All I can say is I just feel very, very grateful. All of those folks that, have supported us over the years, they've made it possible for our family to put a roof over our heads. So it's always very humbling.
And I wonder, because when I worked at a radio station in New York, you used to give out T-shirts of the station, and when you went out in public, you saw someone with a shirt. You're like, oh my God, people actually listen. People are wearing this shirt. Where was your weirdest sort of Old Whaling Company in real life moment where you're like, oh my God, people are like walking around this stuff, they're buying this stuff, they're like showing it off? Is there a moment in your time where it just kind of hits you hard? Because sometimes with me, I worked at a place that had 2 million people listening, but I never thought about it until someone came up to me and said, hey, I listen to your show. I'm like, oh, really? You do? Because you don't think about it. You're so insulated. I'm sure you were so insulated and just trying to, again, pay the electric bill. You're past that now. But when did you have one of these sort of epiphanies of like, wow, people are really into this?
I think when we were at a trade show and this was in Atlanta. And I know Atlanta isn't really very far, but I just needed to get something to eat. And I walked across to Whole Foods in the city. And when I saw our soap there, I was just like, oh wait, this is so weird. I mean, it's amazing, but now like everywhere we go, we can usually find it somewhere. We get texts from friends and family. They're like, oh, like I was in Maine, or I was in Alaska, or I was in, wherever, and look what I found. Those moments are always so cool.
That's so awesome. Let's talk about the future, because you don't just stop at body butters and candles and soaps. Now there's this thing which I wasn't even aware of, something called shower steamers. Like, first of all, what the hell is a shower steamer? and why did you decide to make the jump to start making them?
So one of our best-selling products is our bath bombs. And the thing with the bath bomb is that you have to have a bathtub. You have to commit the time to taking a bath to use one. And just in a practical sense, not everyone has time to just take a leisurely bath. So when you have stores and you hear constant feedback from, customers in person, from our retail partners, from emails, people have been asking for this product for years. Since we have retail stores, is one of the great things. We can bring in other shower steamer brands and see how they sell well. And they sold amazing. We sold so many. After a while, it's like, well, I think this really does make sense for us to do. We planned it out over the course of probably a year and a half, testing different recipes and seeing what worked and what didn't. So basically what it is it's like a little disc that you put into the base of the shower. You have to put it somewhere where it gets wet, but it's not just getting like saturated with water, because it will dissolve very quickly. But it's an aromatherapy, spa-like effect that people love.
And now that you've gone to market with it, is it what you expect? Like, how do you know when you go to market with a new product, it's a hit? I mean, obviously sales, but like, is there like a certain ROI or something like, oh, cool, we made X amount. This, people really want this.
So when we launched, we launched 5 cents, and we bought 5,000 boxes of each scent, and that was a few months ago, 2 months ago actually, and we already have to reorder boxes. So wow. Now we're like, okay, this is amazing, and also crushing our production team, but amazing. We have a lot to figure out with those to make everyone breathe again, but it's going very well sales wise.
And so at what point do you feel like, okay, like you did with the body butters, all right, we need 5 more cents, because that seems like it sounds harder for the production team. But then when do you make that play to be like, okay, well, where's that coastal Christmas shower steamer? Like, when do you decide that?
Yes. Well, people have said, where is the Christmas shower steamer? And we're like, well, we're lucky to have these at all, so not this year. But I think it's just paying attention to what people ask for. If we don't have any requests for any other fragrances, then maybe it's not something that makes sense, and maybe we just stick with those core scents that we launched with. But if we receive constant requests and feedback for other fragrances, then it's something that we consider.
All right. Lastly, we kind of joked how you started from the bottom. You added one employee at a time, and now you built this multi-million-dollar business. But at what point do you say, April Budney, I'm like, I don't know how I could grow this without more capital, without selling to another acquisition? Do you think about that, or is it one of those things where you just kind of like kicking the can down the road? Because there's going to be a time where the demand for shower steamers and candles and soap is going to outpace what you're able to make. When do those conversations start to percolate in your brain?
Well, they have for some time, but I've always felt very strongly that we don't want any outside investors or investments. I don't want to be beholden to somebody sitting at a desk somewhere making decisions that don't make sense for our business because they're not making enough money. That sounds like an absolute nightmare to me. And I don't do well with a boss, so.
So it sounds like it's going to be an independent company for quite a while.
Oh yeah, definitely. I know how to run a whaling company, but I don't have previous business experience. And my husband, he is an incredible businessman. So he's actually recently joined us as our CFO. thank the Lord, because I got it here, but I don't think I can necessarily get it to where it's going without somebody who really understands the complexities of business. My idea of saving for the future is, my husband always jokes that I have like little envelopes of cash, and this amount for payroll, this amount for our overhead. So my brain still very much works in those simple ways, and he can look at things much differently than I can. So he's a huge asset.
That's cool. All right, so let's wrap this up with some advice for entrepreneurs. What is one piece of advice that you wish you would have gotten when starting Old Whaling Company that now, like I wish I knew now what I knew then kind of thing? What is one piece of advice that you wish someone had imparted with you as you were starting the company that you feel like, oh boy, that would have made my life a little easier?
I think for me, I always felt like I needed outside information. Like maybe I should have had like a mentor or read more books. But I think the conclusion I've come to, not that I know everything, but like I think deep down, like we already know the answers, like we know what we need to do. And I would have paid less attention to outside influences and just focused on what I knew deep down was the answer, because I think all that stuff can just be a total distraction. Maybe not for everyone, but for me.
Awesome. Her name is April Budney. She's the founder of the Old Whaling Company. April, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
And that'll do it for another Forbes Books podcast. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. You can always connect with me on X, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Joe Pardavila or TikTok at J Pardavila. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.